Hi there, I'm Ali Motion. I'm part of East Midlands Speakers. One of the things we've been asked by new members is, what are all these roles that we do at meetings and how do I learn them and what should I be doing? That's a really good question because actually when you look at all the roles and you look at an agenda, there's so much to it. And actually, it's not that complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through an agenda for one of our meetings and just talk about those roles. I'm going to start off with the Sergeant at Arms. Sergeant at Arms, their role is to welcome everyone. They initiate the meeting. You may see them with the gavel, bang, bang, bang at the start. It's quite a cool thing to do, I suppose, if you get the bang gavel. But the idea of the Sergeant at Arms is to initiate the meeting. They play a key role in setting up and organising the room and really provide quite a lot of unseen work. They're integral to getting that meeting off the ground. So from their point of view, it's welcoming in, making sure that the room is set up correctly and really just kicking things off. So generally the Sergeant at Arms then hands over to the Toastmaster of the evening. Now the Toastmaster of the evening is our Master of Ceremony. Their role is to keep things moving and to keep things on track, really. The role of the Toastmaster of the evening, they collate the agenda and then they effectively compare the meeting. They're that point of reference as we go from one part to the next. And if they do that effectively and efficiently, those transitions, they seem seamless. A good Toastmaster of the evening should know and should be organised, should know what's going on, should be engaging, and make those seamless transitions. What they'll do at the start of the meeting is they'll do this introduction, explaining about the meeting, welcoming guests who've come to the meeting, and then they'll hand over and bring in the different roles that are going to help them for the day. So the first of these roles will be the grammarian. Now English is a really funny language. The grammarian, well, they've got a role to bring attention to good and poor use of grammar and the rules of English. Now this could be inconsistent tenses, was rather than were, or that sort of thing. When words weren't quite correct. Fewer rather than less. Or it could be celebrating rich and diverse use of words, metaphors, phrases, similes, onomatopoeia, for example. Any of these literary devices that can help to bring a speech to life. The grammarian will do a short introduction, 1.5 to 2 minutes, then return later on in the summation section with a 2.5 to 3 minute speech. That moves us on to the Wordmaster. Now the Wordmaster, they're all about the word of the day. The concept of having the Wordmaster is to broaden our vocabulary. So they'll bring in a word that maybe doesn't get used very often. Our last meeting we had one called rambunctious. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't happen very often I don't use that word very often. In fact, the first time I've used it ever may have been last night. It's not something you hear often. So the Wordmaster will do a 1.5 to 2 minute introduction to explain the purpose of this word, the definition, what it means, and then if possible, put it up on a bit of paper and show that word so that everybody can see it written down. The Wordmaster then spends the rest of the meeting listening, eagle-eyed, or eagle-eared, I don't know what that would be, but listening for the use of the word. Was it correctly used, or did someone just crowbar it in because they wanted people to clap? So the Wordmaster will write down the number of times who used it, the number of times, etc., and report back at the end. But members are also encouraged to use this throughout their speeches and anytime they're speaking in the proper context. And just a note, if you hear someone using the word of the day, if we're online, we used to do jazz hands, but in life we tend to tap the desk or clap our hands to recognise someone using those things. Okay, this brings us on to the counter. Many people dread the counter. The role, once again, introduced by 1.5 to 2, but effectively the counter is looking for filler words, the crutches. And you'll know, when people use filler words, they tend to have a go-to word when they haven't quite worked out where their sentence is going. Or they'll use them for transitions. So, So those words can be really distracting for people listening to the speech because you're constantly hearing that same word. And as soon as you recognise that word, it starts to grate. So the role of the counter is to tally up for each speaker and report back those words. Now I understand why people dread the counter. Nobody wants to hear, Ali, you said so 16 times, you 14, all those sorts of things. But actually, the reason we're at Toastmasters is to improve our public speaking. And I'd argue that possibly the fastest way of improving your public speaking is eliminating some of those crutches, the filler words that you use. And the first way of eliminating them is being aware of the words you use. So possibly before I joined Toastmasters, I didn't know that my filler words were so and you know. Now I do, and I still say them far too often, but I'm working on it. And I suppose that's the only thing we can really do with those. The counter will report back at the end of the meeting on the number of filler words that were used. Typically, this might be, Ali, you had 14 filler words or 8 filler words, and you're trying to reduce those or minimise those numbers. A good counter, as they go through things, certainly the best counters would be able to say these were the words you were using as well. So for me, it'd be useful to know not only how many as I had, but what were the words I was using, and is there a way of changing that? And a lot of times it's just taking a second to pause and understand where your sentence is actually going, and allowing your brain to catch up. But certainly the best counters will give you that specific direction, which I think is really important. So that moves us off the counter and onto the timekeeper. And the timekeeper is the keeper of the stopwatch and the lights. Now people have a tendency to talk. I'm seeing this it's not a speech, but this video is going on and on anyway. People have an ability to ramble and to underestimate just how long they're speaking for. If you want to keep meetings on time, we've got to work to that time. Precision schedule, if you will. And that's why the timekeeper very much matters. So the timekeeper will come in at the start, do 1.5 to 2 minutes explaining their role. But what they want to do for all the speeches and for all the set things that we're doing, there'll be a green, an orange, and a red, timing-wise. So for a prepared speech, generally it's 5 minutes to hit green, so that's the minimum time you would speak for. 6 minutes is orange, that's what you're getting there, you're getting close to your time, and then red at 7 minutes, time's up. Now, what happens when you get to 7 minutes? Generally, you get 30 seconds additional time, and then you'll be clapped off. And that'll be the timekeeper who, in our club, we have lights, changes the lights, pushes the buttons at certain times. So at 5 minutes it goes green, 6 minutes it goes orange, 7 minutes it goes red, and then at 7 minutes 30, you'll start to clap people off. One caveat, the only time we don't clap people off would be during the icebreaker speech, but generally would be ready if you're a timekeeper to stand up and start clapping and clapping people off. I think it's a really important role. I think my view is that it's important because people need to respect time. It can be a bit of a complicated role because you're constantly timing, hitting buttons, changing the lights, and then if you're going to be speaking, you've also got to try and time yourself as well. So it can be a challenge, but certainly it's a very important role there. Once everybody's done these introductions, we then move on to the prepared speeches. As we go through pathways, which we'll talk about some other time, there are certain speeches that you have to do and deliver. After all, speeches are very much why we're here. It's to improve our public speaking. You're going to start with an icebreaker speech, then after that you'll move on to your prepared speeches as you go through these pathways. Generally, we'll have up to 4 prepared speeches, and each speech will have certain objectives, so certain things that people are trying to improve or hit on as they go through that. So it's worth listening to that in terms of, okay, what's the speech? And the Toastmaster of the evening will introduce the prepared speech saying, hi, it's Ali, he's doing the presentation mastery level 2, this is his 3rd speech, these are the objectives type thing. So you know what you're going to be set up for the next 5 to 7 minutes. So timing wise, green is 5, orange at 6, red 7, clapped off after 7:30, if that happens. So those speeches, they sort of take care of themselves because they have the pretty much a structure that you would go through on them. But once we've done those 4 speeches, each of those speeches is then evaluated. They have a certain person, a member will evaluate those speeches. They'll assess how well the speaker did, what they could improve on, and they've got up to 3 minutes to do that. So you've got up to a 7-minute speech, and then there's 3 minutes of this evaluation on there. So my tips for good evaluation is really focus on the person that you're evaluating. They've given this speech. Think about what their objectives were. Think about what they were looking to achieve. And did they do it? Highlight some areas of strength. What did they do well? And why? The why for me is really important as well. Trying to be specific throughout any feedback you're given is what worked, what didn't, and why didn't it work, or what could have improved. Yeah? And certainly the next piece would be meant to highlight any possible areas of improvement. Think, what's the one thing this person could change that would improve their speaking or that speech? Is it hand gestures? Is it changing their volume, so going quiet? And then increasing the volume. There's a whole multitude of things that it could be, but is there one or maybe 2 that would really help them? And if so, really focus in on this. What would you do? How could you change it? And almost go back to that speech and go, you said this. What you could have done is X, Y, and Z, which would have brought this to life. Or that way it becomes far more actionable. And I think there is this piece when it comes to getting feedback. Be specific. As much as it feels great for everybody to turn around and say, give you comments of, oh, that was a great speech, well done, that was brilliant. That doesn't really help you. Yeah, it makes you feel great. But what you want to hear is, that was good. I really like the X, Y, and Z. That was fantastic. I like those specifics. However, one of the things you might want to think about is hand gestures. You seemed very constrained with your hand gestures, or you were clasping, or things that you can then go away and work on. So thinking about being specific with your feedback that then people can put action on. So my 3 tips for feedback or evaluation would be specific, actionable, and balanced. And the balance bit's really important. Toastmasters, it's supposed to be this warm environment where people come to learn, but also it should be supportive. So if you are writing your evaluation, and yeah, you're only going to have a few minutes because you've got the first speaker, the second speaker, third, then it's on the evaluation. So it comes very quickly. If you're ever in doubt, err on the side of positivity. Make sure that the evaluation is constructive and put yourself in the shoes of the person receiving the feedback. I'm going to then move on now to the timekeeper. So once we've done the prepared speeches and then we've done the evaluations, the timekeeper comes back and says, right, I'm going to have a quick report on what happened in the first half of the meeting. So they'll just update on the timings. So Ali, your speech was 6 minutes 52. Or go through each of them and just say, right, these are the times that things take. We'll then normally have an interval, so normally about a 10-minute interval, but depends how we're running with the time. In the second portion of the meeting, we come back with impromptu speeches. So the table topic master will be introduced, and their role is to take a little bit of the weight off for the Toastmaster of the evening for the next 10 minutes or so, 10 to 15 minutes. Impromptu speaking is really important. We don't always get the luxury of having days to prepare our speech. In fact, sometimes we don't know we're going to be doing a speech until the time arrives to do that speech. You think about the work context where you might get asked a question, you've got to stand up and talk off the cuff for 10 minutes or so. So the table topic master, they're going to introduce a topic or theme, select someone from the audience to deliver a 1.5 to 2 minute speech off the cuff. So yesterday was the 1st of March, which was also Shrove Tuesday. I was Toastmaster of I was Table Topics Master. One of the things we talked about, one of the questions was on, what was your last 1st of March? The next one was, what's Shrove Tuesday? Talk to me about the best toppings for pancakes. You can get an eclectic, generally topical subject coming up, and you have no chance to prepare for it. And that's the whole point, is the fact that you then put yourself in the mindset of, I need to deliver a speech, 1.5 to 2 minutes. I'm going to make it engaging, structured, just like a good speech, capture people's attentions. And it's never going to be perfect, but really good speakers take a second, take a breath, and then go. And they really go with it. I'll be very honest, I am terrible at table topics. I like to prepare. I find it very nerve-wracking because I'm just sat there going, don't choose me, don't choose me, don't choose me. But actually it's really liberating to get up and just deliver and go. But then, once you've done the speech, we'll do sort of 4 or 5 of them depending on time. We then get the table topic evaluator. So one person will evaluate each of the table topics, and they'll spend 4 or 5 minutes in total going through each of the speeches, things they liked, things they didn't like, or things that could be developed on there. So once again, some form of evaluation or feedback just to let you know how you got on. After that, we then come back to the summations. So effectively reporting back. The grammarian will come back and give their speech on what was good about the grammar. The word master will come back and say, these are the people who used the word of the day in the right context. How did that go? Then there's the dreaded eye counter, coming back to tell me that I said so far too many times. That's fine. It's useful to be able to work on. And then the timekeeper reports back. The final main role is the general evaluator. Now, some people would say in Toastmasters we are obsessed with evaluation. And because there are some things that haven't been evaluated, such as the grammarian, word counter, grammarian, word master, eye counter, timekeeper, table topics master, and all your evaluators, these can all get evaluated. So the general evaluator has some time, and they will present back their view of what's happened. How could the meeting have improved? How could you have done your role slightly differently? And what worked well? So overall, that would be the meeting. There's a few things that come up during Toastmasters, that words or phrases that become useful. So pathways, I think I mentioned earlier, pathways is the way in which we progress through the different levels of Toastmasters. So that's all online now. And certainly you have an introduction to that when you come to meeting. Some people get hung up on the salutation. So generally when we begin a speech, we'll begin it with Mr. Toastmaster, Mr. or Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. So that's a salutation at the beginning of any speaking. One of the things we also do, it used to be the handshake to the lectern and the person at the lectern spoke in these COVID days, etc. Or in Zoom, we've not really done much. And then recently it's been sort of elbows on there. But things hopefully returning back to normal, that handshake to symbolise who's in charge on the lectern there. A couple other things. Yeah, constant evaluation. Certainly one of the things that seemed odd to me when starting Toastmasters was everything's been evaluated. So it does feel maybe slightly intimidating. Someone said to me once, feedback is a gift. You just got to be open and accepting of it. As long as feedback is constructive, it can actually be really beneficial for you. So not something to necessarily worry about. I think there's also a case of when you start off at Toastmasters, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot going on. And some of it feels quite, not cliquey, but antiquated. Like, why are we following this set role, etc. If you don't know what's going on, tap someone on the shoulder, ask. I think it's something that hopefully today's helped in terms of just going through the roles. If this has been helpful, drop some comments below. If there's any other questions that